Look at this chat.
And
LA, NYC, Tennessee,
yes,
Austin, Chicago. Patches in Chicago has interviews starting tomorrow.
There we go. Yes.
Oh, all right.
Okay, so I'm gonna start sharing my screen, and I'm gonna go into that very. So we have the time to go through all the questions. So allow me for a second. And there we go. Okay, everyone. So can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
All right. All right. There we go. So, hi, I'm very glad that you're here. This is not a chat and learn, it is chat and transform, I would say, because there are so many valuable informations and such a great advice from people like Shay and Kelly that they are here and time for us to learn better and to perform better. So, here we are today in this ambassador edition of Power to Fly. Housekeeping rules, you guys know now this is being recorded, so no worries of keeping any notes. Please, we're gonna have many questions today, but if you have any other questions, drop them in the Q&A section. Drop me a DM if you want to remain private and do you want to ask something. And also comment, participate, react. We are a great team, a great community, and we are here to help each other grow. So with that, I'm Linda. I'm a minimalist. I'm a digital nomad as well. I never mentioned that, but I am. I'm an ambassador for Power to Fly, work as a community manager, and at the moment, I'm hosting these virtual events for Power to Fly. And we have, of course, Kelly. Kelly is the founder of the Allora Collective. Many of you have been in these events, and you have participated in the events of Allora Collective. But for those who don't know, Kelly is working in global recruitment along with personal experience, changing career paths. She has lived across Europe and the US, and she's an expert in giving career advice and also preparing people for the next career transition and leave. So, Kelly, would you like to introduce yourself a little bit?
Sure. Thank you, Linda. It's always good to be back with you in Power to Fly. I've been doing events like this with Power to Fly for over a year, even just before I started Allora Collective. I was working in technology recruitment internationally, as Linda said. I am originally from New York. I moved myself to Los Angeles, then I lived in Seattle and then Amsterdam in the Netherlands. And I came back to Los Angeles in 2018 to really do the things that I enjoy most, which is helping people on the candidate side, career change, remote work transitions, whether that's working from home and also strategic relocations. I got to live my expat life and I want to help other people do the same. I just don't think anyone should feel stuck. So my company specializes in helping. I have a team of coaches. Patch is having a hard time hearing. Anyone else having a hard time?
Yeah, Kelly, you're
yeah.
I hear you, but it sounds muffled a little bit.
Oh dear. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll just try if I can mute and unmute. Or maybe I'll just speak a little louder. I'll try that. So Allora Collective is a team of coaches. When you work with our plans, you get to work with all three of us. And I really designed it to help people either change careers, like I said, switch to remote work or a different life of work, decide where they want to be working. So I dropped my links in the chat. If you have any questions, I look forward to seeing you.
Okay. Can you hear us, Kelly?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Okay, because it's a noise. I think if you mute and unmute again, we can just fix this. Okay. All right. Thank you so much for being once again here with us. If you have any problems with all the microphone, let me know so I can check this. But yeah, thank you so much again for being here. Very much appreciate your presence and all of your valuable advices. And today I'm extremely excited to meet for the first time Shay, and I'm so glad that she would like to participate in one of these events. She is a senior technical recruiter at Reddit, and if you want to know more, she's also supported early stage startups within HR, tech, fintech, social media, across a variety of technical and operation administrative roles. So, Shay, would you like to introduce yourself as well to us and tell us a bit more about you, who you are, and what would you like to help us today?
Sure, of course. Yeah, I'm so excited. Kelly and I have been connected for probably a really long time and just virtually met very recently. And I just love what y'all are about, especially Linda too. I've heard great things, and really excited to chat today. So as Linda mentioned, I'm Shay. I've been recruiting about 8 years now at this point. Started off doing agency recruitment, a lot of high volume temp roles, and in the past couple of years have been focused specifically on working with startups. So really love to see sort of the progression that's happened in the industry, helping people break into tech, because I think that there's a lot of misconceptions about, how to get your foot in the door. More about myself, from Orange County originally, Irvine, if anybody knows. I know we've got international people on. Based in Los Angeles. I'm a California girl. I don't know if I'll ever leave. And yeah, excited to help out. And, my focus has been technical roles the past couple years, but have definitely supported in a variety of different industries and roles as well. So I think we're going to have some really great advice for everyone.
Oh, thank you so much for being here with us today. So with that, I'll go back and I'll stop sharing because we really have many things today. So if anyone has their microphone on or anything, please, you can of course unmute yourself if you want to have a question. But for keeping this event as neat as possible, please keep your microphones unmute. So to start with, we have our first question, and this is to be honest, I really like all the questions, and I was thinking when I was reading them, when I was going through my interview process, it was like a hard 3 months process in interviews. I was thinking, why the destiny doesn't want me to have you two when I actually needed you? But because I'm a good human being, I'm going to share these questions with the rest of people who are seeking for positions and they would like to prepare themselves. So the first question, why is job hunting not a part of our education? And please explain this to me.
I think it's a great question. I think Shay and I both have good answers for this, considering even though I do this full time, when I was still doing recruitment for companies like Booking.com or in the NFL, I was still helping people on the side, right? I built an entire workshop series, the first job search program for General Assembly to teach people how to get jobs. And I think one of the reasons why it's missing from physical education is because back when that curriculum was built, people got jobs reading a newspaper and from people they know. And the whole dynamic of career and job search was totally different. Plenty of people didn't go to single income families, and things have changed over the years. So before the Great Recession, when I was still working in staffing agency in New York, when the recession happened, all of a sudden, all the people that got jobs because friends of theirs left and just referred them, and they never even really needed a resume, all of a sudden, everyone needed a resume because you had this many candidates and this many jobs. So education hasn't really kept up with it. The only class I ever had that talked to me about a resume was a public relations 101 class in college. And that really didn't even help. So the idea that I was able to go from staffing agency to internal recruitment, building a workshop, like 8 workshop series program at General Assembly to teach people how to get jobs, and then learn international and come full circle here to really teach people, I think it's the best, right? Because I think if they put it in formal education, they won't be able to change it fast enough to keep up with how quickly things change. I think, Shay, you can add as much to that as well. We both worked in tech. I mean, the language of today is gone tomorrow. So I wonder how you see that changing, and especially how people get into it.
Yeah, I think to your point, Kelly, I think a lot of it has changed. And of course, I came up 8 years ago where when I first started my first agency job, I remember we were still keeping track of people's names and phone numbers on a legal pad to like text and be like, hey, are you available for work on Friday? And like going to recruit at the swap meet. And, you know, like job boards were not an efficient way to work because there was not enough people on them. To now we've had, I think LinkedIn has really contributed significantly where you have more qualified people than ever in the market, more competition. And so now it's become a networking and you know, for lack of a better term, I hate this term, but personal branding game where like if you're not able to convey your skills, you could have the most qualified, most perfect background ever. But if you're putting your resume in against 100 people with similar qualifications who are better at branding themselves, you're going to lose every time. And so now it's become more of a, yes, the best practices are still there. You need to be able to interview and communicate and all of these things, but it's become so much more difficult because of the market. So I feel like a lot of what we do now is retraining people to kind of leverage like, okay, you know that this thing is different and this is how you get the competitive advantage. And we want everybody to have that so that you don't have to have a hard time because it is extremely difficult.
Yeah. It is. It is. And I honestly wish like we had this information in education, like in university, to understand better how to brand ourselves and how to project our skills out there. Because, yeah, we learn all these skills, but nobody told us, all right, you're going to get a diploma, but how are you going to use that diploma anyway? So to move to the next question, what is the most important question for a candidate to ask in the interview?
I love these. I mean, I think everybody should have a short list of like your generic questions that you just want to ask every company, every interviewer. And I try to frame that of like your non-negotiable. So like if company culture is super important to you, then, you know, ask specific questions about how does the company reward top performers? What does a fun activity look like and how is participation, you know, what does that look like getting really specific about those things that are important to you. But at the same time, I think like one of my favorite like back pocket questions that you can always have, because it's so like general enough but personal, is like, what's keeping you here? Like if you're asking your interviewer, like, okay, especially if they've been with the company for a while, hey, you've been here 5 years, like what has motivated you to stay here and what are you looking forward to? If they get a weird answer, you have your answer. And if you get a strong answer, then you're able to see kind of like what your career progression or potential could look like there. So that's one of my faves.
I love that. I couldn't agree more. And I 100% love that question too. I think it's important to ask what keeps you here, especially if someone's been there, you know, longer, like you said, 5 years, 3 years, whatever it might be. And I think in large part what we mentioned before about how LinkedIn has taken this space, you know, it may not be, it's a place to look for jobs, not the only place, but it is the best place to research and prep for your interviews and find out who you're speaking with and come up with those questions. So just to complement what Chez just said, if you're interviewing with someone that's been there, let's say 2, 3 or more years, what keeps you here, right? I mean, 5 years could outlast a marriage. That's amazing. I definitely want to know what keeps them there. If someone's been there less than a year, what was it like onboarding for you? How did the team welcome you? Did you show up one day and they said, let us know if you have any questions, and then it was up to you to do it? Or were you set up having lunch every other day or every other week with someone else, right? How did they show you where the documentation was? So I think you can use both sides of those coins to both sides of the coin to really understand what it would be like in the situation to join a company. Another question I actually like, because I work with a lot of people that are looking for growth and development and trying to understand the difference, is especially if you're talking to a potential boss, a manager, even a colleague, actually, I do like to ask for an example, or I think candidates should ask for an example of someone who came in and was able to grow in the company and who helped them do that. Did they have a mentor or did they have an ally? Two different things. So I think those examples, particularly even if it was someone that I worked for, I would ask, can you give me an example of someone on your team who's grown while they worked with you? And how did that happen? And what was your involvement in that? right? We all want initiative. We want to be learners. We want to fit that, job description, but it is up to the other people as well to volunteer and to want to teach you. It's not cheating. So there should be really a two-way street.
Yes, I really appreciate those answers. It's more to understand the culture of the company you're going to enter to see, like, all right, I like the position, but how is it the actual work? How are my colleagues going to guide me through? How am I going to cooperate, collaborate, communicate? And these factors are very important because I can see like there are companies that they just onboard people and say, okay, welcome. This is your first week. Find out yourself. These are the documents, read them through, and then bring us results. And people are like lost. Like, how am I going to know? How am I supposed to know what's going on in your company? I just came here. It's my first day. How you have a demand for me to create a project from A to Z? And the other thing is like something that I've witnessed lately. People are projects for assignments from people, specific projects, and people who do not even work in the company yet. And people have to deliver this project and say, how am I going to know like the insides of this company so I can create this project? And I believe this is also a very strong sign about the particular culture that people bring. So to the next question, what is the best interview question you have ever asked or have been asked?
Oh,
That is a good one.
yeah. And also, Linda, when you were talking about the projects, I just wanted to point out for people who are interviewing, if you're asked to do an unpaid project and the work is the same as the work that you're going to do at the current company, I mean, my advice is to run. Maybe not that dramatic, but I think that's usually like a red flag.
They want to be mindful. I mean, if it's a design interview assignment, that's typical, right? Or maybe a coding assignment,
right.
2 hours or less, cool.
Yeah.
It should be compensated if it's not, but if it's a fair project, okay, you don't want to give them all the answers. But I definitely agree with Shay that you want to be cautious and maybe ask for someone else's opinion if they think that it's more work than you should be giving if you're unsure.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I usually ask, and I asked this before I joined my current company, was, what are some challenges or things that like you didn't anticipate in this? I think it was for a peer interview. So like, what are some things that surprised you basically, like after you joined, and trying to get a feel for like, okay, what am I, getting myself into? Because I like to know beforehand, like if there's going to be challenges, any job is going to have its moments, but like, how can I mentally prepare myself or at least know that it's coming or know it's not something that's like a super crazy, concerning type challenge, before getting myself into the role. And if they mention a challenge that you've been through before, it's like, oh, volatility, no problem. I've been there. So I think that's one that's my favorite. I think it shows like good engagement, but it's also like easy for the interviewer to answer, because I find that sometimes people like want to try to impress and like ask these really difficult questions, and then like the interviewer doesn't feel like confident, and that's also like a weird situation to be in. So I try to keep it like light, but still something that's going to get me some value.
That light and honest is the way to go. I often tell people, until you get to offer, all you're really doing is making friends. So show up as yourself and really dig into the people, because you could have some really sexy work going on, but if you're working with a bunch of people you don't really like and you don't want to go, it's not going to last that long. It's not going to be a good place. So try as much as you can to trust yourself and kind of really just get into a conversation instead of taking a test. I'll take the flip side of that. I agree with Shay's question. I love that. As an interviewer, one of my favorite questions when I was training other interviewers or running teams is I would have them ask the candidate to teach them something. And I would have them give the candidate 5 to 10 minutes alone in the room to figure it out. Doesn't matter if it's how to use a pen, doesn't matter if it's how to write on a piece of paper. Teach me something. I don't care if it's how to tie my shoes. It's relaxed. It's an easy way to communicate. And especially when you're working in tech and the pressure is on, when you present it to a candidate that way of, we're going to do something really simple so we can make this easy. I want you to teach me something. I'll leave you and I'll give you 5-10 minutes to take a minute, whether it's tying your shoes or how to use a pen. Just relax and teach me something. And then we'll get into the heavy stuff. I found that it also broke the ice when people are in technical interviews and they've been prepping and almost like in a panic over it. So before we hit a whiteboard or a coder pad, we would do something very easy, right? Everybody knows how to tie a shoe. So that was one of my favorite interview questions. And it came from a product designer in Seattle. And he was like, I love this question. I'm like, oh my God, that's great. And candidates liked it too. So that's a good one. What's next? We have a lot more questions. We've got
Yes, we do. Let's go. So, any advice for how to follow up after the interview?
Yes, follow up.
Oh, go ahead, Kelly.
No, I was going to throw it to you. My advice is always to follow up. I usually do a framework of 3 to 5 days, depending on someone's sense of urgency in terms of the follow-up. And I'm pretty clear on subject lines, like what are you asking to follow up on? Is there a status? Are you letting them know that you're still available if it's been a while? So I think that question outside of always follow up should really be tailored to the person's stage and interview process who they're talking to. But I would love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, it's interesting because I've gotten into a couple heated LinkedIn debates about whether or not like the thank you email or thank you note is still required. I personally don't require or expect like a thank you from the candidate, but I think there's a couple things. Number one, it depends on the level. So if you're interviewing for a director or above, my expectation is that you have a personalized note to everyone on your panel. It could be a quick email, or you can just send the recruiter all of them and then they can forward, or HR person or what have you. I think as a leader, it's really important to show that like you're already leading before you get the offer. For entry to mid-level, I think like a quick check-in is fine. And depending on your relationship with that company, if it's a casual company, I think a text message is totally fine. Like sending the recruiter or, hiring manager a note to say, hey, I really enjoyed my conversations the other day. Here's where I'm at, et cetera, et cetera. If you have something nice to say, or if you remember something from your conversation that was like substantive, oh, I had a conversation with such and such about this concept, and I really enjoyed how the company thinks about like that. Those types of things are like the cherry on top, where to me, I'm like, they're interested and we could probably get them, hired if they pass, their interviews. And I think it's also worthwhile if you're interviewing and the company knows that you're actively interviewing, checking in after your other interviews, especially if that's still your top choice, to say like, I'm done with my interviews. You guys are still top of my list, like kind of putting it all out there. Because I found that those highly engaged candidates, it can tip the scales between you being like a silver medalist and a front runner, because you've expressed your interest in like, hey, if you guys were to make me an offer within my expectations, I would sign. Like, you don't have to explicitly say that, but conveying that through your follow-up is the best.
Wow. And
Yeah.
thing is so on point. Whoever's managing your interview process, the recruiter, the HR person, ask them the best way to follow up. Do they prefer text? Do they prefer email? Do they prefer LinkedIn? Ask them which inbox is, or which way is the best way for you to check in with them. I think that's perfectly brilliant advice. And I think that's the way to go for everybody. And it, like Shay said, it depends on what the follow-up is about. Maybe your interview went so good and you had such a good conversation that you only had a minute left at the end and you didn't get to ask any questions, but it was actually a really great conversation. In your follow-up or at the end of the interview, you can say, would you mind if I sent you a few questions I had since we're out of time? There's your follow-up. And then you're continuing the engagement and you're showing them the interest. And I think that, rings back to what Shay said of showing your interest and your knowledge about what people say and remembering those little bites of, I really appreciated what you said about this. It really, it stays with people. They will remember that. And I think it's worth it. It takes a couple minutes.
Yeah, I really like that, because first of all, we have to know like how to contact people, because not many people like to receive so many emails, they already have like a full inbox with emails, or they don't even check their LinkedIn. Like some people I know, they are so busy, they don't even check their LinkedIn emails. So I like the specificity of that. If you have something to say, then follow up and ask something specific or engage in the conversation or other comments. So I really love that advice. And before I go to the next question, we have a question here from. Please correct me if I don't say your name correct. It's Patches. You can jump off camera and tell me that this is not the right way to say your name, please. I don't mind. But the question is, I attended Lesbians Who Tech last week. I have deep conversations with numerous companies. Some seem to be moving fast, others are a little slower. What do I do about managing the different opportunities and associated timelines without burning bridges?
It's a great question. So first of all, I would say take advantage of every opportunity you had and reach out to everybody. You're not going to have one straight answer. You're going to have to go with it. And then you're going to have to adjust as things come until you're in like later stages of interviews. Like if you just have 3 first rounds, there's not so much to do other than say, I want to let you know I'm actively interviewing. And in the first conversation, ask them, how long does your interview process typically take? Because you're one of my favorites. By the way, they're all your favorites until you get an offer. All of them are your top choice. So I want to be sure and I want to be transparent so that you know about my availability, and I want to give due respect to everyone else that I met at the conference. So I would say be upfront and be honest from the beginning. And then as you get to later stages, like if you have an offer out and you need to buy time because you're waiting on another one, that's a one-to-one conversation. If you get stuck and you need help like that, you can book a free session with me or one of my coaches to kind of get through that. I'm sure Shay talks to people all the time about this, but from my experience, the more honest you are with it, the better it is. And just remember that the recruiter or the person on the other side of that, at that company who's managing your process, they have to be on your side, not against you, right? It's like offer negotiation. You don't have to go back in the old kind of general guy way of, I want this much money and that's my counter. No. It's, I love this company and this team. I want to make this work. How can you help me? Or how close can you get me there, right? Because remember, that person is your ally inside that company. They're the ones that will try to buy you time. They're the ones that will try to get you a better offer. So it's really about being open with those relationships. And then you kind of got to deal with it when you get to it, right? You won't burn a bridge unless you're kind of just a jerk to people, which I seriously doubt you are. Hi, Patches. I doubt you're going to get on there and be like, right? As long as you're cool, it's cool. And if people react because you took a different offer and their reaction's horrible, it really says something about them, not you, because you have to do what's right for you in the end, right?
Right.
That's only my thoughts. What do you think, Shay?
Yeah, so honesty is the best policy, yes. I definitely agree with that. And the fact that until you're in later stages, you really don't have anything to update other companies on unless they're like way off, right? Like if there's an initial conversation that you're having and then you're like, oh, I'm not on site with this other company, like let that first company know. Like all of those things are kind of standard. And then in terms of strategy, I've actually seen a lot of interesting things, especially like in the last 6 months, a couple of which I'm like, ooh, candidate, I'm stealing that strategy. That's really smart. Which the first one is, you know, for candidates that are like, say you're about to get an offer, like you finished your onsite, went really well. The recruiter's reaching out to say like the team really liked you. I'll have news in a couple days. You can at that point kind of check in and say, just want to let you know I still have 2 weeks of scheduled interviews, but like, especially if it's your top choice, you could say something like, if you guys were to make me a competitive offer, I'd be willing to cancel my other interviews, depending, you know, that kind of thing. So you've got that to play with. You also have candidates where they'll say like, hey, I know you're going to move me into an offer, or maybe you're having the initial conversation. Don't send me the formal offer. Because if you only have like a 48-hour expiration or whatever, what I can do on my end is essentially like verbally extend. The candidate can check back in with me to say like, okay, it's okay to send the offer. I have out all of my other ones, to try to tee up your offers together so that you have expiration dates within the same time. especially if you're looking at things that are very comparable opportunities. It's just easier mentally when you can kind of sit down and look at everything at the same time. And you can be transparent and let companies know, like, I would love to look at all of my offers at the same time. So what flexibility do you have with my turnaround? I want to be, as upfront as possible, as long as you're not stringing along. Where you get into the situations where it becomes a little bit uncomfortable is, I extend a candidate an offer, they ask for a couple more days, and then a couple days turns into 3 weeks because they've like spun up whole new processes during that time, which is like, no shame. It's a hot market. But, if you're setting the expectation that you're trying to buy a little bit more time, or you have a specific deadline, and then you're asking for, weeks more beyond that, that's where you start to get into the territory where people may get a little bit frustrated.
That's really such a good point. And on that point too, is the way that you describe to companies what your status is very important. So I've had clients come to me and say, I have an offer, but they don't have an offer. They had a verbal mention that someone planned to give them an offer. So what they should have said to the recruiter is, I have an offer extension pending and I'm expecting an offer within the next week. How fast can we finish the interview process so I can manage this? And then that line of, I want to give all of you the same respect, even though you're my first choice. Sorry, even though you're my first choice, in case my volume's off again, is the best way to go with it. But just I would say be specific about the status of your offers. Because if you have a company like Chez, if they rush and they get you through process and they get you the offer, and then your pending extended offer now shows up and you ask for another week, they're going to be like, but you said you had an offer.
Right.
And it seems like you're playing a game, but you're not. You're actually just off by one word. Does that help, Patches?
Yeah, and I just want to make sure that I get the language exactly the way that I should be using it. So you said, I want to let you know that I'm actively interviewing. How long does your interview process take? You're one of my favorites, and I want to be transparent. I mean, I'll finesse it more. I'm literally reading off my notes right now. I just want to make sure. Yes. Okay.
That's
awesome. And since you all gave such fabulous advice for me, I just want to tell you my favorite interview question to say as the candidate, asking them what's the difference between a good candidate and a rock star candidate in this role. Every time I've used that question, recruiters have always said to me, or hiring managers, nobody's ever asked me that. That's a really good question. So just wanted to offer that to the universe. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That's a great question. Thank you for sharing. We got to get Patches on a panel.
Right.
Yeah. Thank you, Patches. Wow, we have other questions here. I'm just going to go through one from Carol, and she says, as more mature candidate, there is always that moment when the virtual interviews begin, where they will see that you are not a spring chicken. What is the best way to to alleviate concerns, especially if you sense they won't be interested in you because of your age?
I think it's a fair question. Tell me, Shay, if you disagree with me or not. But to be honest with you, there's nothing you can do about it. We have no control over what anyone thinks or the judgments they're gonna pass, whether they're passing judgment and they decide on looking at your resume and your years of experience, or what you look like on camera. I mean, I have a ring light in front of me, but it's not like I'm staring at my face right now, which makes it much easier for me to do these things. I think as much as it is a concern, you have to move past it and you have to focus on what you can do. Do your interview prep in the right way. Do your STAR method. Have your career stories ready. Practice your behavioral questions. Know yourself. Know your experience. Know the examples of your resume and your accomplishments, and be ready to talk. And when you tell them those stories and they can close their eyes and visualize you in the role, all of that stuff is going to be gone. And if it's not, that is not the right team for you. And I don't think either one of us want you on that team. You should find other people, because having maturity and social experience is an asset. It's not a detractor, it's an asset. Someone fresh out of school can't function in a team or doesn't have the experience yet to be able to communicate and stay calm when everything goes wrong. And something always goes wrong, always, right? It's not a matter of, are we going to make mistakes? It's how are we going to move forward and find solutions when mistakes happen, right? So that's really important. And I would kind of think of those things as assets and lead with that. Lead with your experience in that way. What do you think, Shay?
Yeah, I love this. I hate that this is a situation that people even have to think about, but unfortunately, it is the world that we live in, where you log in, and anytime that I would do interviews, because same thing, the team. You see a facial expression or something where you don't feel super comfortable. That's probably not the company for you. But I think I've had some really great experiences with candidates that are older, and my previous company, one of my favorite candidates, he ended up getting hired. But he, in our initial call, he's like, I've got 30 years of experience in this field. Like, this is, a mid to senior role. Like, is that going to be a blocker for the team? And I said, no, it's awesome. Like, we would be lucky to have somebody with your experience. But one of the things that he really highlighted was the fact that, yes, he has a lot of work experience and he's been in many environments and solved these problems many times over, but he still wanted to learn, and he still wanted to be in an environment where his contributions, he could give as much as he got back from other people in the industry. And I think this was for a technical role too. So it's like, things change, technologies change. You still have an opportunity to kind of see from a fresh perspective. Like, I think that there's a really great way that you can talk about the fact that, like, yeah, I've been in the game for a minute, but I still have a lot to give and I still have a lot to learn. And, depending on the industry, you can kind of talk about like changes or shifts or things that the company is obviously benefiting from you joining, but you're also benefiting as well, in kind of a changed perspective or different dynamic or something like that. So yeah, I think it's definitely a plus. I think companies get into a pickle where they're concerned about leveling, because it's like, oh, this person has 35 years of experience, we're not going to be able to afford them. It's like, you don't know that until the person is talking about their expectations. So that's also something where you can, if you feel like that's a concern that you're getting into, kind of lead with, I'm looking for a competitive salary at a kind of senior level, and I'm flexible on what leveling looks like for me in this role.
It's a great, and that pings back to what we said before about the recruiter needs to be your ally, because they're the ones that are going to pitch you to the hiring managers. They're the ones that are going to say, listen, here's what I got from this person talking to them. So it's really important to try to open up to them as much as you can. And I know recruiters don't have the greatest reputation, unlike me and Shay, because we're outstanding, but you have to kind of leave the ones that don't work. It's like dating, right? You're not going to find a husband or a wife or a partner like tomorrow. You have to go through some tough ones, but when you find a good one, they're an ally. And if you don't get that job, there's still a connection of yours, and they will refer you to someone else. If you say, hey, I noticed you know someone at this company, can you refer me? That's always going to be your best shot. I see a question in the chat really quick that we can tackle. And Danya asked if the questions we suggested earlier for a candidate and an interviewer are specific to a recruiter or a hiring manager. The way that we phrased it, they are more specific that way. Like, if you're recruiting for a recruiter job and the recruiter you're speaking to has been there a year or less, then ask them what it's like to onboard there. Ask them how well the teams have communicated with you and taught you the hiring structure. If it's a hiring manager, what's kept them there, and what has career growth and development looked like for you at the company, and what kind of support do you get? Like, what was your rise like? If they were hired at one level and they've remained at that level for, let's say, more than, I'd say, 2 years or more, ask them what growth is like in the company. A little bit subtly, but it's the nice way of saying, how come you haven't had a promotion yet, right? But you want to know what that feels like to a hiring manager. Anything to add, Shay? Are we good? We got a good list.
Good.
All right, next question. All right, we have a compensation question. Let's tackle Michelle. How do you answer the question, what compensation are you looking for? Do you provide numbers or state that you would be negotiable? So this is actually on our questions list. We could just move it ahead. My favorite answer is, that's a great question. At this point in the process, I don't know enough about the team or the role to give you an exact number, but I am open to the fair market value, and I have done my research. So what budget do you have open for the role? Unless you're at a very senior level and you're way more practiced, you can go through a range, like Shay was saying. It depends on the level you're at. But I'd say if you're mid or less, you want to try to get them to give you a range first. What do you say, Shay?
I think it depends on the company. Because here's the thing, I'll talk to people where I don't know, like in my initial call, I don't know what level they're at. So like if I give you a range and it's like $100,000 worth of range, like that doesn't really mean anything. But what I can say is, for a candidate where you maybe don't want to disclose, or you want to see what their numbers are first, you can ask something like, based on my years of experience and alignment with the role, what sort of range will we be looking at? And then even if you just do, if they're not willing to give you a range at all, I feel like that's a flag. But if you can ask, based on my years of experience, what would you guess? And of course, I'm not going to hold you to these numbers or something like that. And then for candidates that are comfortable disclosing, give a wide range. Obviously, always add cushion, maybe 10, 20K. I'm like not conservative when it comes to salary negotiation. Like ask for more. And then if I end up getting less and then you hit your number, we're good. And with total compensation, especially this is more specific to startups, if you have any equity or stock expectations, to talk about what sort of value you're looking at and at what valuation of the company. Because you'll find that I talk to candidates and a lot of times it's not apples to apples, where they're like, oh, I'm making 500K, but my company only has a $2 billion valuation, versus somebody that it's at like a 400 billion valuation company. Like that 500 is going to be worth a lot more. So, you have those sort of things. So I think the more that you can share, especially for senior candidates, you're basically saving yourself from wasting a lot of time if the company can't meet your expectations. But if you're earlier on, I think just practicing asking is a great start.
Great
Oh my
points.
God, like we have so many points. Yeah, please.
Yeah, hang on one second, Linda. So use the tools that are there for you, everybody. Go to Glassdoor, try to find a similar job posted on LinkedIn where it might show you the salary range expected. Use payscale.com, salary.com. And then what Shay was talking about in terms of AngelList, which is angel.co, that's a great source. They have a salary calculator, and you can also flip it to see the average equity that might be offered with a role, right? So do your homework first so that you have a range in mind, and then you could talk about it. If you don't know, laws have been passed, not in all states in the US, but in a good handful of them, that they are no longer allowed to ask you what your current salary is and make you an offer based on that. That is a huge problem and has been for years for women and people of color, because that's how they kept everyone earning less, because they would give you a 10 to 15% bump of your current salary. So that's why it's really important to talk about the market rate for that role. If you're switching careers, that's the target. Your experience that you bring with you from a different career, maybe it's industry experience, right? Maybe you were in finance and you're switching to design. So then your target company should be finance companies. Do design for them and leverage your experience in that industry. And you can ask for the top of the range. But do your research on those ranges. There's also staffing agencies that publish salary guides every year, like Robert Half does, Adecco does, Onward Search does, Hired.com is another good source. So
Seven has one.
Yep. Have those numbers in your head before you go into it. And then remember that we told you try not to say a number.
Yeah. And the last resource is also, if you have recruiters in your network or contacts, it takes 2 seconds for me to look up our comp data to just tell you, like, I'll get messages from people and they're like, oh, I'm asking for this role. Can you see if your internal is kind of similar? Because we have the, I forget which third party we use, but it's like an aggregate data of, all of these companies. So find a recruiter in your function, like to Kelly's point, if you're in finance, like find finance recruiters, and, it takes 2 seconds to say, hey, can we jump on a 15-minute call? I just want to double check my numbers in terms of the market. Most people are more than happy to talk shop about these sorts of things, especially if they're actively looking and they think they can turn you into a candidate. But there's so many resources out there, people who are kind of in this field and dealing with these market numbers all of the time. Like, you do not have to fly blind between all of the online resources and people on LinkedIn willing to help.
Amazing. Like, I can't believe like how the time flies. Like, we have like
You muted yourself.
Yep.
sorry.
Oh, you're back.
I'm back. I had like a small technical issue, fixed it. So thank you so much, everyone, like for being like here and participating live with us and asking questions and clarifying things. I think there's no more great value of taking your answers live from these events and clarifying things, specific things that you would like to learn and improve your skills in interviewing. And with that, I will go to another question. So to the next one. These are like two questions merged in one because like very similar. And they say, do you have any good advice for getting over nerves? I struggle with keeping my speaking concise whenever I'm nervous. Any tips?
I love this question, and I'm glad that it was asked. I think that I want everyone to know that we all get nervous. I mean, I played baseball with the boys in second grade, and to this day, if I go to a batting cage, I'll get nervous before the ball comes towards me. I have interviewed and hired and recruited thousands of people, and I will still have a moment before I walk into it or before I get on one of these events to do calls. Everybody feels it. 9 times out of 10, when you get the shakes, nobody can tell. 9 times out of 10, when you feel like you're losing your breath or you're getting a little nervous, maybe you feel a little bit sweaty, no one can tell. So I think the best thing for confidence is practice. Practice with a friend, practice with a career coach, invest in yourself and practice your answers and practice talking about yourself so you don't feel like you don't know what's coming, right? Because if you prep enough and if you do enough prep about your own career successes and stories, you'll be able to answer 4 or 5 questions with one story. And you'll be able to figure out how applicable it is, especially if you work with someone like me or Shay, who's been through it this many times. Another one, depending if you're Insight or, yes, this will be recorded. Thank you, Shay. Another quick tip, and this worked for me, whether it was on site or on video. If you feel like you're getting nervous, your heart races a little bit. I also played saxophone when I was younger in school. You can tap your foot in your shoe. Say it was on site and we're all allowed to do events again and you're speaking in public speaking. Nobody can see your toe moving in your shoe. But when you tap your toe, it's similar to a musician having a ticker. It will involuntarily calm you and it'll help you keep your breath just by doing that. If you're on a video call, you're like right now I'm tapping my fingers on the table and nobody can see it. It's just a way to pace yourself, right? You're also allowed to keep things that are comfortable. Whether it's on-site or video, you're allowed to have a notebook. You're allowed to have a pen in your hand. You can start the interview by saying, I'm really excited to speak with you. I hope you don't mind if I look down. I like to take notes and I'm prepared. So you have that moment to look down and you can give yourself that space to take a breath. Those would be my top suggestions for that. Anything to add, Shay?
Yeah, I'm totally just like a naturally anxious person. Believe it or not, I have social anxiety and I'm a recruiter. But I think that there's a lot of things. Practice, definitely. I am a big fan of notes, and especially with video calls, I think it's leveled the playing field in a way. Most of the time, I actually didn't split my screen today, but most of the time, if I'm doing like a video call and I need to also have talking points, I've got a Google Doc that like, it has a script version if I get super nervous, and then it has like a notes version where I have like my main bullet points. But I think practice and really thinking about your career as like this narrative, as a story. You've got your beginning, you got your, juicy plot points, and then you've got your, where you are now is making sure that your stories fit in that. But it's easier, I find, to remember if you can think about it as this like story arc. And kind of having your notes there. And yeah, to that point, I mean, I still have hiring managers that will ping me and they're like, oh my gosh, I'm so nervous to like go into this hiring manager call with this candidate. Like, people are nervous on the other end too, which I feel is a good reminder for us all that interviewing is not the most natural thing for most, and it's okay to be nervous. But yeah, notes, practice, split your screen if you've got a double screen. And also, you know, taking time to take breaks as well too. If you've got a particularly long panel, it's totally okay to, you know, tell somebody at like either the beginning or end of your, you know, next panelist, like, hey, I just need a water break or something like that, you know, bio break. Can I take 5 minutes, turn your camera off, have your little Zen moment, and then come back into it.
And just before I have like one more question, like from the submitted question, I would love like for you, Kelly and Shay, to tell the people where they can find you and how they can contact you. We have another 8 minutes. So I would really love for you to share where people can find you, book a session maybe with you, and contact you on LinkedIn and network.
Thank you, Linda. That's lovely. Okay, so everybody, again, you can find me on LinkedIn. I will paste all of my links in the chat right now after I answer. The website is alloracollective.com. On Instagram, it's at Allora Collective, or it's at kelly.alloracollective. You can connect with me on Insta. Definitely connect and follow on LinkedIn, because I share leads of people that are hiring all the time. We also share great advice. And from me and my team, we are a team of 3 coaches currently. We offer a free 30-minute session to anyone who wants it. We don't spend the whole time pitching you. We try to give you some free advice to help you in whatever situation you're in. And you can learn more about the plans and the services that we offer for one-on-one help on the website. Thank you so much, Linda.
Thank you as well.
I'll add my links as well too. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm not doing any sessions, but you can connect with me. Maybe in the future.
So, yeah, who knows?
Connection is incredible, everybody. Remember, your connections in your network on LinkedIn gives you visibility into everyone else. So for example, when you connect with me and Shay, that means when you do searches on LinkedIn, you'll then be able to see all of our connections as second connections of yours. So take the advantage, open up, connect with people. It'll only help you reach more people.
Amazing. Thank you so much. So I'll go to the next question for us. And we have here, I'm looking for my first product design role that is the best way to set myself apart from the sea of applicants. What is the best way to set myself apart from the sea of applicants?
I mean, it really depends. I think for product design, if it's your first role, if you have prior experience, any industry you can carry over, then use that to select target companies to go after. So you have an advantage over the other candidates. Like I used the finance example before. Maybe you worked in customer service for a SaaS company and now you're looking at product design, then go after target companies that are SaaS companies, because you can talk about what you already know about the company, their product, their technology. You're just diverting it to a different channel. And because you have prior experience in that other area, you can ask for the higher end of the range for the role you're going for. What do you think, Shay? Oh, and portfolio is everything for designers. We know that. But.
Portfolio is everything. And you know what is my biggest pet peeve is for design candidates. I did a lot of design recruiting at my previous company. People would post their portfolios, no contact information. All of their projects are locked. How am I going to know if this person is a fit if I can't even see anything? So I think having at least 2 to 3 projects that are unlocked. I get that if you have protected projects from a previous company, you know, definitely have those closed or put a password on it and have the password on your resume to your top companies that you're sending, but we need to be able to see your information. And for your portfolio, SEO optimize it so that when people are searching for designers, we're actually finding you on Google and LinkedIn. And there's ways that you can do that if you want to dig in further. I can send a couple tips, but at the end of the day, a lot of it is relevant keywords and making sure that you're sort of industry matching to the work that you've done. And then when you're applying to roles, I think especially as career pivoters, like you really want to personalize your resume to make sure that it feels as relevant to the job description as possible. So if you need to have the posting up next to your resume as you're making tweaks to make sure that it matches, you have to assume that the majority of recruiters that are looking at your information have maybe 20 or 30 seconds to look through there. So you want to make a great first impression. It does not have to be the prettiest resume. I see a lot of designers that have these like gorgeous formatted resumes and there's like barely any text. I would prefer the text. It's searchable, and that's what's going to map to the role. So those would be my two cents.
You have a specific project that directly connects you to the role or the company or the industry, look with that project. Whether it's directing them instead of the homepage of your portfolio, direct them to that project, or you can do a single page PDF of that project and attach it as your resume and make your resume a 2-page PDF so that someone, obviously, like Chez says, you have 20 seconds and they see, oh, this is a connect. Remember, your resume and portfolio don't get you the job. They just get you the interview. That's it. The interview leads to the offer. The resume is only to get you the conversation. So it has to be just enough that someone wants to ask how and why you accomplished and how and why you did these things. So give them whatever you think might be the hook. It has to support the role in one way or another.
Amazing. Yeah, thank you so much. I'm excited for everyone who participated in this event today because I can see how people get so excited and so inspired with what you're saying at the moment. And I'm sure that the next interview that people are going to have, they're going to have like this great advice from both of you. And I'm very appreciative that you are here and you give your time for us and you share your knowledge being in recruiting and in also tech companies. And this is something that I wish more people like you could share the knowledge out there, so people like me don't get confused when they're interviewing. So thank you so much. Thank you so much. And thank you everybody who came here and participated and shared the LinkedIns as well. Last things that you would like to share with us, Kelly and Chez?
Just that, you know, the process feels really personal for candidates, but it's really designed in a transactional way and it's very much up and down. I think expectations are a lot of it. People will ghost you, they won't get back to you. Sometimes you won't get feedback. Sometimes you get feedback you don't agree with, but you got to just keep it moving. You got to keep it moving, move on to the next, find people that support you. Don't look for advice from someone who's gone from job to job to job and was never interviewing or out of work. They're not going to get it. So find the right support and just keep going and you'll find the right thing for you. It's really important, I think, to figure out where you belong and where you want to be. It's a much more frustrating process when you're only reading job posts and figuring out who wants you, because it's like you're trying to fit into what they're asking for. So if you can start your process by thinking about where you belong, you'll feel more in control. It's more proactive. If you're full on in job search, you should be blocking your time, sometimes looking for jobs, sometimes going for target companies. So have a balance so you feel like you have some control in it.
Stop interviewing until that offer is in your inbox. This is one I cannot stress enough. I've seen so many people delay their job search by months and months because they lost momentum, because they were really hoping for that one to hit, but you got to keep interviewing. There is no loyalty until you have signed your offer. Get all of the opportunities that you can as clustered, as close together as possible. Make strong connections. Like Kelly said, I like the, like when you're interviewing, you're making friends, but really if you're making a positive impression in your interviews, those people are willing to vouch to their networks for you. Even if you didn't get hired, if they really liked you, I see it so often where they're like, oh, how can I help this person? You know, that's super important. Leverage LinkedIn, but don't just use LinkedIn for your job search because it's very saturated right now. And yeah, the chat has been so engaging. Like this event has been so much fun. Hopefully this advice has been helpful, and hang in there, y'all.
Thank you so much.
10 seconds when you're looking for target companies, especially if you're looking for companies that are more diverse, like Patch has mentioned, she went to Lesbians Who Tech. Look at female forward and diverse focused job boards for target companies. We don't care if they have a job posted for you, but if they're advertising on that job board, they're telling you that they're looking to hire someone like you. So make those connections. Power to Fly, Career Contessa, Girls in Tech, Lesbians Who Tech, Black Girls Code, Women Who Code. Go look for companies that are looking for you and then use LinkedIn to research and navigate your way into it.
You there.
Exactly.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I wish you a great evening, morning, noon. Enjoy. Bye-bye,
you.
everyone.